Hi, you're listening to Kate Palmer. So what I've got here is 3 of the acrylic snowflakes from Heidi Swapp. Ghost shapes from Heidi Swapp. I'll be using the Magical Micas from Lindy's Stamp Gang to colour these. Now, they don't usually colour onto acrylic, but the way I'm going to do it, they will stay. These are the same colours I've used on the background of the card, except for the French lilac, which I'm going to add to give a hint of purple to the snowflakes so that they stand out a bit. First thing I need to do is start with the lightest colour, which is the Wisteria Purple, and take the lid off. I'm using a water brush and just dip the water brush into the little pot. And then I'm going to grab the lid. I like to work from the lid and mix the paint in the lid. This lets you get a really nice smooth blended colour. As you can see, it's quite blue, even though in the pot it looks a bit purple. You just need a little bit, and you don't want it to be too wet, otherwise it will bead on the acrylic. I'm just going to tap this all over the acrylic snowflake. Now I'm actually working on the back of the snowflake. On the Heidi Swapp shapes there's a small lip, so the paint or the water-based paint doesn't run off. So you're not using very much. You don't want to colour the whole thing. You want to leave some space for the other colours to show through. So just grab a little bit of colour as you need it, and again mix on the lid. I like to sort of move the colour around in the lid until the powder is dissolved, so it's nice and smooth when you apply it. If you don't get the paint dissolved properly, it can be a little bit lumpy. Okay, so moving on to the next colour is the Azure Sea Asters. Now I like cleaning my water brush on a little piece of scrap paper. I'm not very neat. I can be as messy as I like, and I just have to throw it out afterwards. Again, you can see the powder looks gold in the pot, but as you mix in the lid, you can see that it's a really deep blue. That's why it's really important to make yourself a colour chart before you start, or you can end up with some really odd colour combinations. Okay, so all you need is a light tap for this second colour. Again, you're not trying to colour over the whole thing. So I'm just taking a tiny bit on the tip and mixing it in the lid, almost like a miniature palette. By the time we're finished, we'll have a beautiful 4-colour mottled effect. Now, between the first 2 colours and the final colours, I'm just going to leave a little bit of time for this to dry. That's it for this colour. Again, just cleaning off my brush. I'll use the French lilac next, just so that you can see a little hint of purple coming through. This is quite a rich colour, so you don't really need very much. Take the tiniest bit on the tip of the brush and then mix it together into the palette. Because the purple's such a strong colour and I don't want a purple snowflake, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of this, add a little bit on the tips. Now this won't look quite like you're expecting when I turn it over, so just bear with me. What you find when you create these kind of pieces on acrylic is that one side is quite dark and vibrant, and the other side is quite pale, very subtle. Alright, I think this is beginning to look kind of gorgeous, so I might just leave it to dry for a little bit more. Again, clean off my brush. You can see that mottly effect. It's still nice and shiny, and you've still got the beautiful sparkle of the magical micas. Looks almost like a watercolour effect. Now just put it down and use the Frosted Forget-Me-Nots to go over it as that last colour. Now I'm just working from the lid again. A little clump on the tip of the brush. Mix it together into quite a thick paste. So be careful not to squeeze the water brush too hard. Now this is the final colour. I'm just going to dab this over the back to make sure that we don't end up with any clear or any lighter spots. Again, just filling in any spots that look a little bit pale or see-through. Now be careful as you're doing this, because you don't want to remove any of the magical mica paint. So as you can see, I'm just holding it very, very slightly on the edges. As you can see, even though that first colour that we put on beat up a little bit, each consecutive colour seems to grab that little bit better. So we end up with a beautiful even coverage from the magical micas over the acrylic snowflake. Now again, I'm working on the back, and we will need to coat this when we're finished. Now I'm just going to let this dry for about half an hour. Okay, so I've gone ahead and coloured in the other two snowflakes with the same magical micas that I used on this larger one. And I've left them to dry, probably left them about 30 minutes. And then very, very carefully, without touching the actual magical micas paint, I've gone over the top of the paints with some glossy accents. Now you could use Dimensional Magic or Diamond Glaze, whatever you've got. I had glossy accents, so I've used that. I've then let the glossy accents dry overnight. And what this does is that it makes sure the magical micas won't rub off, because they are on acrylic and they're not meant to be painted on acrylic. So if you just left that without putting anything over the top, as you handle this, the magical micas would rub off. So I'm just going to try and give you a closer look here. Okay, so we've got the larger ones. I've made the other two a little bit smaller, so we've got some difference. And again, this is the back. So there we go. So as you can see, it's nice and glossy from the glossy accents. And you can still see that lovely mottly look. Now when we flip it over, this is the front, it's significantly paler. So you now have two options. You can either use the front if you're looking for a paler colour, or you can use the back, which is coated in glossy accents. So again, you've got the smaller ones. So this is the front, quite pale. And this is the back, coated in the glossy accents. So it really depends on your project. You may want this more subtle look, or you may want this deeper, darker look. Again, you've got two choices here.